Boom, and we are live. Welcome everyone to episode 25 of the Patriot Propaganda Podcast. We have with us today another amazing guest, Mr. Jason Lavigne. How you doing, brother?
Bonjour, monsieur. Comment ça va? I'm doing very well. Nice to see you.
Ça va très bien, merci. Jason is also the host of the Yellowhead Yacht Club podcast. So make sure to check that out on YouTube, Rumble, every day. So impressive stuff. I'm promoting this because I'm just in awe of the fact that you do 2 podcasts a day, Monday to Friday, starting at 6 a.m. That is impressive.
Well, there's a lot of messages to get out there, and there's not enough hours in the day, so you got to do what you got to do.
Right, 100%. I saw. I hadn't heard of your podcast until you interviewed odious Patton, Mr. Jeremy McKenzie, my friend, and so that one was clearly a large one. Always is when he comes on a show. He's got a lot to say, and you guys, I think, went for like 3.5 hours or something like that. Did you not?
It was like old friends just getting together, and that was my first time meeting him. It took a year to get him to agree to it because he was a very guarded person. He was going through a lot of things last year, but it was amazing to have him.
Yeah, right on. Well, let's get right into it, man. So I'm curious I'm always curious about people's stories. I'm fascinated in what makes people tick, and certainly when they start to do stuff either online or in person, activism, IRL, stepping off the curb, whatever it is. And so what is your origin story? At what point in time did you realize that you needed to do something like start a podcast and preaching the gospel, so to speak?
February 22nd, 2022. Justin Trudeau, en français, said to the country, if you don't like what I'm doing, run against me and make change. So that's exactly what I did. At that moment, I decided to become a candidate and run for office because he's not wrong. That is the way to make change. If we don't like what he was doing to the truckers on that day, we have to go and gain support, go ahead and run, go in there and make change. So I was incredibly motivated when he did that particular speech live. Everything before that was horrible, but then when he made a call to action, it felt like he was talking directly to people like me who had enough of his stuff and said, you know what, he's not wrong. This is one of the first time I'm going to agree with this gentleman. He's got an idea there and I kind of like it. And that's what spurred me on. The very next day, I started to research what it would take to run as a candidate, reached out to the CPC, the PPC, and ball started from there. The rolling started from there.
Okay. Wow. You have to keep going, man. Tell us more.
Yeah, for sure. So what I didn't like is, of course, what everybody else saw was the invocation of the Emergency Act. I'm a paralegal in Ontario that moved out to Alberta. So I was around the legal system and I understand how to read a statute and I understand how they work and what's required. And I knew very, very quickly that this was an injustice. And it hurt my heart. It hurt my heart watching that video. The straw that broke my camel's back was watching the young gentleman named Zot. Zot was walking around Ottawa with his camera. And live, we were watching as he wound up to a police checkpoint on that day. And he was trying to cross. He was trying to go in there and show us the situation, which is why we were tuning into Zot and Viva and Travel 69 and Auto Walks and all those guys. But Zot was live. And my wife and I were sitting in our trailer watching that. And I'm like, okay, cool. We're going to see what's going to happen today. And then he gets stopped. He's like, okay, I'll cross the street and I'll try and cross again. And then an officer stops him. And then if you haven't seen this, do look it up. It's traumatic. An officer stops him. And then another one comes running from across the street and says, get him. Don't let him through or something. Comes running at him. They tackle him. His stream ends. That was a real shakeup because we're watching live this gentleman being detained for doing nothing than trying to report what was going on to us. He wasn't accosting them. He wasn't being abusive in any way. He was
Okay.
following their instructions. He asked, "Can I go this way?" And then they arrested him.
Yeah.
So that was a real wake up for me and a lot of people, I think.
And he's just a kid. Like, not that that's like
Yes,
relevant. You don't do that. Like, even if it was an adult or whatever. But he's a kid, like 110 pounds, soaking wet.
yeah.
Not a threat at all. But clearly, the camera is.
Yeah, totally. And hearing the stories in the media and then watching it through these streamers and seeing the complete contradiction in it, knowing what these people were going through, because I too was, I still am unvaxxed, and I had lost a job over it. It kind of put our situation in a bit of a pickle. But
Mhm,
my motivation wasn't my job loss, or because I had troubles with travel and other things because of the non-vax decision I made. It was what was happening in Ottawa. These people have a right to protest. We have to do this. This is part of our function as a public, is to let the government know when we disagree or dissent to them, and not even having that function available to us in a way that they would pay attention and listen and at least sit down and talk. I
mhm,
never supported the idea of just going over there complaining and getting your way. That's whiny baby stuff. But I absolutely supported the idea of having a conversation and requiring the government to tell us a little bit more about what they were doing.
mhm,
My hope was he was going to sit down at a table and explain to us why the answer is still no. And
mhm,
I would have accepted that if our leader was able to show us in terms that we can accept that no, I have to do this. But saying nothing, not even willing to talk to us after an entire year of other protesters getting the attention of the government, that felt really wrong to me, and that felt very, I almost want to say, designed to cause us to divide. So my eyebrow went up, and I've been paying a lot of attention to everything since then.
yeah, yeah. No, well said. The goal was to talk to somebody, and they didn't even do that. And I
No,
was I was of the same mind. At least sit down and talk to the people, and tell them to pound salt. Like, that's fair game, in a sense. The answer's
for
still no,
sure.
but this is why. And I took the time to speak with you. Thank you very much. Get out of here. That would have changed the flavor and lowered the temperature, or
Oh, it
raised
would
it.
have.
I don't know, but it would have been something better than what happened, which was just completely ignore. Which, and I have my own theories about that. Like, one of them would be, I guess, that it was done by design, like you said, in order
Mm.
to, poke us and say, "Go do a terrorism, do something bad," and yeah, and to the saying, go full retard," and they did.
Yep. Yeah, and it bothered me because it hurt my heart, because I know what they should be doing. These are Canadians, but they were
Hmm.
coming out with rhetoric pretty quickly, like talking about terrorism, and we don't negotiate with terrorists. And you were hearing that replicated in the mainstream as well, and with
Hmm.
just regular people. They're like, "No, they're terrorists." Well, no, they're Canadians, and they actually have a legitimate grievance. So we should at least listen to them. And I agree with you. We don't have to get a yes or change. We just need an explanation. I believe if he would have came up and told Canada his reasons and they made sense, then I think Canada would have supported him, and most of the people would have decided, "Oh, okay, I get it." But acting as if it's like a parent that just said, "Because I said so," and
Hmm.
left it that way, it really demoralized a lot of people, and it really caused a lot of people to stand up. And I was so proud of that, because we're supposed to a fully functioning democratic society has dissent, and it has critics, and it's our job to point out the flaws, because they're not perfect, and we're not expecting perfection, but we
Hmm.
absolutely have to be able to provide our opinions, and be free to do so, as long as, of course, I still believe that there should be some limits. Like, we shouldn't be trying to overthrow the government or anything like that, but you certainly should be able to demand cooperation and at least a conversation.
Yeah, and I think a frustrating thing for a lot of folks was that messaging that you were seeing in the media. It was very negative black propaganda that was being
Yeah.
pushed, and so the word terrorist, for example, you mentioned. I happen to be somewhat of an expert on terrorism, and
Thank you for your service, by the way. I really
oh,
appreciate that.
no problem, man. Yeah, it's I mean, everybody knows the definition, but loosely it is, committing violence or acts of violence or threats of violence to achieve a political aim. And of course, the only anecdotal evidence of violence was the sound of the horns and all of this stuff. And I myself got called a terrorist by people, like physically, like to my face. You're a terrorist. You're a turncoat, and like what a fascinating time that is, right? We love our veterans, we love our citizens, our police, our firefighters, our nurses, whatever, so long as you stay in your box. Right. And these people didn't call me terrorist because they came to that conclusion by themselves. That's what they were being told we were. And it's just the parroting effect, which was like fascinating to see on such a large scale. And you really do understand. If you didn't understand the propaganda game at that point, you did then. And it's only gotten worse. It's quite wild. So yeah, so let's keep going, man. So clearly, you took his message seriously. You saw Zot get detained at a checkpoint in a city, in a municipality, the capital of the country, a G7 nation. Pretty wild. Yeah. So keep going.
Yeah. So my first move after that was to calm down. I was mad. I had to calm down, and I don't normally get mad, but it broke my heart because I was not watching the Canada I grew up in, and there's no way I was expecting that. I wouldn't expect that even on a group I didn't agree with. I would expect still, people to be respected and have a conversation. If they take it too far, that might be a different story, but that's not what we were seeing here. So my first move was to reach out to the CPC. I'm a conservative voter. I voted conservative in the last election. I'm a very traditional person. And I supported Conservative Party in the last election. So I reached out to my MP and he took my call, which was really exciting. So, a little bit of first hope. I'm like, oh, okay, I can reach out to the MP and he will take my call. But it was an interesting phone call. So my intent of speaking with the CPC party was to help him, join him, help him, make sure that there's no doubt we're going to get the Liberals out. And that was like a common goal. Let's go ahead and make sure that the Conservative Party is as strong as they can be and ensure that they're going to take care of this problem. And I also wanted to have a little bit of inside accountability. So I wanted to see from the inside if we can make this accountable, what the previous government did. And I just wanted to get in there and help. But this phone call was, first half of it was incredibly uplifting. I was talking about what I've done in the past, what my experiences are, and he was impressed and he really enjoyed that. The second part of the conversation was just weird because he admitted to me there's no mechanism to bring me into the party. There's no way to bring it in. Typically, you come out of political science in university and you go through the young part of their party, and then you make your way up, or they select you. So if they recognize somebody in the community that they want to, work with, they will select them. So those were the only two ways to get in, and I didn't fit into either one of those categories. So he admitted to me, I don't know what to do at this point. I don't know how to bring you in, but I'll get back to you, was his commitment to me. Okay. He didn't get back to me. I reached out to him a few more weeks later and said, hey, what's going on? I'm still interested in volunteering even, because I think I can bring some skills to the table that could improve our chances to win against the Liberals. No response. So I hit up the PPC. So I joined the PPC party, made a donation to them, and within an hour, one of the EDAs contacted me. He said, hey, welcome to the party. We just wanted to say hi and reach out to you and let you know that, you can reach out to us. And they were asking, do you want to volunteer or do anything else with the party? I said, well, actually, here's my CV, my resume. You take a look at that and you let me know if there's anything in there that you think is valuable and that you can use. 40 minutes later, I get profanity in the positive in an email like, oh, wow, beep, 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 beep. I can't believe that you reached out to us. So they were excited. So I sat down and had a conversation with the director for the Yellowhead area for the PPC party. Amazing people, by the way. I just want to highlight this at the beginning. There's a little change in the story later, but the people were super amazing and super accommodating. And immediately I started to mesh well with this guy. And we went to a meeting. He invited me to a meeting with the entire party, like everybody in Yellowhead. At that time, they didn't have a candidate. Their candidate from the last election was from outside of Yellowhead. He was kind of like a pitch hitter that came in and ran, and he did quite well. He finished second. So it was Conservative, and then it was PPC. And then I met him, and I met the entire group. Amazing people. And I'm going to tell you something, Alex. I was, you know, I don't like mainstream and I don't listen to mainstream, but I do digest it. I
Mhm.
have to, because that's where a lot of information is hidden. You can find information in the mainstream as well. And I'm going to say I kind of sort of was buying the far right label that they were putting on the Liberal Party, but I never totally did, because of course I joined and I'm not a far right anything. But when I went to that first meeting, there was people across the spectrum there.
Mm.
Across the spectrum, there was a gentleman who was homosexual. There was POC. There was every type of Canadian you can imagine were there. So my very first exposure was, this is the People's Party. They
Mhm.
absolutely welcome all people into the party. We got to chatting, and then very quickly they offered me the candidacy in waiting, which is, they can have multiple, but that just means, hey, we're interested in you. We think you have potential. We want to work with you to become a candidate. So then I went through a process for about a month and a half, 2 months or so. I was interviewing them at this stage. They've said, okay, we want you, but now I was checking out what the party itself will offer a candidate.
Right.
Um, I'm an entrepreneur, so I have a big history of starting from nothing and building something and then selling it. So I have a very good understanding on how you go from nothing to something.
Mm.
And support of the candidates I felt was important. So I reached out to the party and said, hey, how do you support us on the legal side of things? Will you tell us where we can't knock on doors? Will you tell us what the ordinance are? What's the federal rules? Being a candidate comes with a book like this from Elections Canada that requires you to understand. So I was asking them, hey, do you have that kind of support? Nope. What about fundraising? So when I go out there and fundraise, do you have a platform that I can use? I just add my name to it. Do you have support around that? No. All right. How about the website? Do I do I have a website where I can put my name on it, but it's for Yellowhead, but you guys run it, and I kind of do that thing? The answer was no. Oh, okay, okay. Well, then how about an email address? Can I get an email address so I can kick this stuff all off? No, we don't have that yet either.
Wow.
So immediately I found out that it's a young party. They're really
Yeah.
growing. There's
Yeah.
338 members to take care of, and it's very difficult to support them all. Now, I don't want to say the party hasn't approved that, because as we'll get into my story later, I was able to interview Maxime himself, and he updated me on some of that stuff. But at the time, it wasn't very supportive. But I'm a hard worker. That won't stop me. But what will stop me is doing a bunch of hard work and then have Max take the seat. So I
Mhm.
sat into a meeting. Okay. I sat into a meeting where Maxime explained to all of us that he was going to identify 4 regions that had potential for him to move his family to. Okay. Makes sense. Quebec is not a place for the PPC. So that
Yep.
makes sense.
Yep.
And then I was getting concerned that while we had a good showing here in Yellowhead, and I feel pretty confident that I can meet my neighbors and get some support, what would happen if I go and build that support and then Maxime decides this is a good riding for me, and decides to take it? So I asked the party, really politely, do you have a commandeering term in your contract? And they like that. They like that term. So he comes back and he says, we don't commandeer anything. But what we do is, if Maxine wants a riding, we'll have an election and we'll hold it and we'll put it up to the members to decide what should happen there.
Okay.
Now, I'm a very practical person. I know that if a leader runs for a riding and loses, that's going to shake up the entire party.
Mm.
There's no scenario where the leader can lose an internal election and still be a very competent and respected leader.
Right.
So I didn't think there was a potential path forward if I was challenged for the seat by Maxime himself. So because of that condition, I asked for an exception to the rule, to their term in their contract. No, they wouldn't provide it. I'm like, oh no. I'm a very strong person with my integrity, and I didn't want to say to a single constituent, I will represent you in the next house if you vote for me. If I have your support, I will do A, B, C, and D, only to have that be replaced by someone else who didn't make those commitments to those people. So it would break my heart to make these commitments to anybody to vote
Mhm.
PPC to support me, only to have it changed to somebody else. I couldn't do that. If there was a potential that Maxime wouldn't come, I would be able to go ahead and build that support and build that base. But
Right.
without that ability, I just couldn't. So that's when I made the decision to go ahead and do this independently and register as an independent candidate and take the hardest road there is to Ottawa. But I believe if I'm successful at this, it's going to be a very rewarding one for the constituents of Yellowhead, because they'll get a non-party aligned, a non-party whipped, and a completely designed candidate for the people and not for a party, because I'm not party affiliated.
Right.
So I won't have those challenges. It's a tough road. It's the toughest road possible by far, especially if it's in a dark blue region like Yellowhead. I
Yeah.
definitely didn't take the easy path, but I believe the rewards for Yellowhead are going to be enough. They're going to be rich enough that it's going to be worth the effort to try and get that done. So that's kind of what got me to independent candidate.
Yeah, and I agree with the stance that you took, and I applaud you for your integrity, because there's no way I would be able to do the same thing. And it's funny; it's almost as if they just would. This is just me guessing here, but it's almost assumed that they would expect you to just give in, like, oh, if Max wants your seat, like, here you go, come on in, sir.
For sure.
Which is, but if you are a person of integrity, and given your background, like you said, you're an entrepreneur. You graduated with honors in paralegal.
Yes.
And you're an IT technology architect. You built your own businesses, like you said, and which have and you're a pilot and you're a father, right? So you're clearly a risk taker, but you're also a logical person, and you appreciate, from what I can see, the fruits of labor and the
Absolutely.
honor that comes with that.
Yeah, something like 98% of people that enter flight school don't finish. And I found that attractive. I like challenges, and you absolutely have to work hard on that. And it sounded a little weird, like I'm at honors in law school, but I'm in tech. Let me explain that timeline.
Sure.
So I popped out a nerd, 100% a nerd. I am the definition of nerd. I loved computers at a very early age, and I was working with them a lot. I'm also an introvert, which you probably will understand, because I'm an introvert, but yet I do an extrovert thing like this. But I was in technology for the first 40 years of my life, and built up a couple businesses, sold one of them as a ticketing company. So we took on Ticketmaster in the early days with a company called Ticket Break.
Okay.
So we're the number 2 ticketer in Canada for a while there, and then we sold that off. And then I took all of that, and that's when I went back to law school, because being an entrepreneur, one of the things that you learn very quickly, and this is just a sad thing of life, is people will come after you for no other reason than your success. And I've had a couple incidents in my life, legal ones, where I became the defendant on stuff, civil, never criminal, but still, nonetheless, they are pretty devastating to be part of, only to win in the end, but after great cost.
Right.
So what I decided to do is I didn't want to be intimidated by the law anymore, and I didn't want to be intimidated by anybody filing a suit against me. I wanted to understand, how does this work, and be able to handle it. So I took the self-represented mindset a step further by becoming a professional self-represented guy, by actually getting the law degree and finishing that up. It was a 2-year course, so I thought that was well worth the commitment. 2 years may seem like a long time for a lot of people, but for 2 years, you can have your legal issues addressed for the rest of your life. That seemed like an easy call. So went to law school, 2-year course, busted my butt, got it done in a year, doubled up everything. Because again, I also want to get back to income generation, because there is no income generation as a student. Finished that up, and voila, passed the exam on my 40th birthday. So that was the February 14th, 2017, my 40th birthday, and I passed. So anybody out there that thinks that the law school has to be done when you're younger, just sit down and do the work. Every night, my family gave me the space to do it. Every night I would do homework, just like I did in school, and because I had to double up, so I had to do a lot of it. But yeah, I did end up finishing it with honors, the highest mark that school ever had. I was proud of that. But I can also, thank my classmates on that, because some of those marks are group marks, so we all have to work together to get those high grades. But yeah, finished and then graduated and got my license on my 40th birthday. And that was really to learn the legal system so that I don't run into problems again. And it has helped. I have been able to deal with the other issues myself. So that's been great. But it did also allow me to apply as a municipal prosecutor for the United Counties of SD&G. So this will be the county that's not far from you,
Yep.
just east of you. I didn't get the job, but what they ended up doing is put me into their IT department because I have a massively high tech background,
Yeah.
and they had a big need for that. So I worked with the government for a couple of years before moving out to Alberta, and I really enjoyed that because it gave me an opportunity to see how government operates on the inside. How does a regional government run, which takes care of 6 municipalities? So it was a great
Contracts and
contracts, the people, the hierarchy, the municipalities
mhm.
under the region, the mayor works with this. Yeah, it was a really, really good education. And it also helped me identify some faults and some problems with government that I think if I get elected, I can assist with as well. So some
Mhm.
pretty good experience, I think that I've accumulated that allows me to be well positioned to be a candidate.
Absolutely.
And
I can understand why the PPC would be like, all right, cool. This guy has a pretty solid resume CV that we can use. And also to your point about the CPC not taking the CPC youth, right? You have to
yeah,
be someone of someone that they want, they headhunt.
right.
I don't know if you're familiar with Member of Parliament Alex Ruff, shaved head guy.
Not
He
yet.
was an infantry officer, colonel. I used to work with him at CJOC in Ottawa. He was headhunted by them when he got out. So they have their list of five.
Yep.
Types of people that they will bring in that the leadership would say, yeah, that one's going to work for us. But yeah, it's just so interesting to see that play out. But even when you do make yourself your way into these big parties, you still have to toe that line, anyways.
Right.
So
Right.
and I'm sure we could talk about all kinds of scenarios about that. So yeah, please carry on. So yes, it gives you're on the PPC path there, and you said some stuff was going to happen down the road. So please tell me more.
Yeah, yeah. So when we get to Max, but what happened there? And I now made the decision to run for office,
Right.
and at that point, I had exactly one voter, my wife. Okay, exactly one supporter. They were going to be there for me, my
Most
wife.
important one.
It is because if you don't have your wife's support, it's going to be a lot more challenging.
Hmm.
So I started to meet my neighbors. I started to reach out a bit more, talk to people, and I got a taste of the desire that the right candidate came around in the right timing and the right mood, they would consider a different type of conservative, a more independent conservative. But we have a very large riding, Yellowhead. It's 5 hours tip to tip, and it's
Okay.
sparsely populated. We've
Okay.
got Drayton Valley, we've got Edson, and we've got Rocky Mountain House. Those are kind of the collections of the towns, but the rest of it's very sparse. So I was thinking about ways. Well, how do I get myself out there? How do I put
Mhm.
myself out there so that people will support me and learn who I am and basically, follow not follow what I'm saying, but understand my platform so that I can communicate to them.
Right. At least be seen. That's always the challenge in rural areas.
Absolutely. So that's where the podcast idea came up. And I'm like, well,
Okay.
I watched Viva Fry do his law tube stuff, and I thought that was really interesting because I
Yeah.
watched a lot of those. The Johnny Depp trial, because you had Laceda Law doing that,
Yeah.
and it was really interesting. I thought that was a really nice format to have law explained. And then Viva took off to the Florida. So around this
Mhm.
time, Viva said, "Okay, I'm out. I'm going to Florida. Quebec is too crazy now, and I'm gone." I'm thinking, well, Viva's gone. Who do we have left in Canada for law? Well, we have
Mhm.
Ian uh, Barkley, Ian something. He
Okay.
does a lot of gun stuff, so he's pretty cool.
Oh yes,
But
with the gray long hair ish.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ian
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
something.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. He's out in Alberta. I'm trying to connect him with
Yeah.
him, but we have him, but that was about it because Viva left. So I thought,
Yeah.
well,
Right.
would people be interested in a paralegal talking about this convoy stuff? And then the POEC was coming up, and I thought, well, there you go. They're going to be showing the Public Order Emergency Commission, and they're going to be having all these witnesses, and they're going to be streaming it. This might be my opportunity to go ahead and sit down and start to build an audience and do something with my time in order to become a
Mhm.
recognizable candidate. So
And
that's what I
something
did.
in your wheelhouse too, which is like, boom, there's a
Right.
nice opportunity there.
Right, because again, I'm an introvert, so I had to be comfortable with whatever it is I was doing, in
Yeah.
order to actually do it well. I
Yeah.
can't fake. I'm not a faker. I'm not an actor, so I couldn't be a character. I have to just be me. and thankfully for me, that's working. It's pretty easy to be yourself. So we did the POEC thing. That was 8 weeks of every single day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
It was 8 or 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours. Sometimes they ran late. And I was doing commentary 30 minutes before, let it run. And then when there's breaks or anything that happened, I would do commentary. I would eat while they're talking and then get ready for my commentary. And then like 2 hours at the end, I would recap what I saw and we would talk about it. And it got a little popular for me at least. And I built up this little base of an audience that keeps coming back every single time. And I thought that was really, really cool. I flew out to Ottawa to be there for the last 2 days, which was Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau's testimonies. Ooh, those were fun days. Planes, trains, and automobiles to get all the way out there. But I managed to do it. I sit through that testimony. I did some live updates from the lobby there, and then came back. We did a week of deliberation, and then I turned off my stream suddenly, and it was a big surprise to some people because the plan was to revisit the POEC now with a fine-tooth comb. We've watched it one time already. Let's see what we can find that they missed and stuff like that. But I learned quickly that during those 8 weeks, my family was supporting me more than I knew. So they were picking up the slack and handling things behind the scenes to make my life really easy. And because they made it really easy. But what I wasn't realizing at that time, because my focus was on the POEC and my purpose to expand my image, I neglected my family. So one morning, my wife came in and asked me a very simple, basic, innocent question to give her some help. And that kind of triggered me and made me realize, oh my, I haven't been the best anything. They've been the best everything. But they've allowed me to focus over here, and I haven't given them the time that they need and deserve. And I wanted to give them. It's my family. So I shut off the camera. So I shut off the camera from mid-December to mid-May before I came back. It took some time to decide how I want to do this and how we're going to work on it and how we're going to balance the family and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and work-life balance is very important.
Yeah, totally. And so that's what happened. So I announced to my little group, hey, May 15th, I'm coming back. And that's what I did. My first video back was bad lighting. You couldn't even see me, but you could hear me. And because I'm doing live, I'm not going to pause and redo anything. We're just going to roll with it. And I think that's the best way to do with it. Yeah. And then every day after that, it got better and it got better, it got better. And then one weekend, I reached out to Tomarazzo, who I met during the POEC days. He was on my show just a couple times. He would pop in and give a little interview and then leave. So I reached out to him and said, hey, do you want to do like a 2-hour interview? I know you got your podcast, Meet Me in the Middle, and I know you got your book coming out. So, you want to talk about that stuff? And he said, sure. And then I got another guest and another guest and another guest. And now I can't stop. I'm booked all the way through August with guests. You're one of them, thankfully.
We'll
doing an interview with you.
You sent me your calendar. I was like, man, this guy is hustling, man. Good for you.
Yeah. Well, because there's so many great conversations to have, it's kind of tough not to do one. Like I do 4 interviews a week, and then I do my Wednesday special, which is a cross Canada special, where we meet about 12 different Canadians and we hear from their different regions and what's going on. But I do 4 interviews a week, and they're booked solid. And my morning show, which was just a coffee show to begin with, has now turned into a mission to assist the Coots 4. So my morning show is 100% talking about the Coots 4, Jerry, Tony, Chris, and Chris. And if you know the story, these are 4 innocent men who are in jail. And this is day 501 of being incarcerated. So we hooked up with Granny McKay, and we hooked up with Donald Best, and we're now tackling that issue. Nobody else is. So every morning we sit down and we talk about what's going on with the guys now, because Granny is going every day to watch the trial, and she's there for the week as they're working out some stuff, and then she reports back to us. So we've taken a bit of a mission to put a spotlight on the Coots 4. And I got to tell you, Alex, the response from the community on this is amazing. There are 3 things everybody says to us. First one is they're still in jail.
Yes,
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's wild.
No idea.
Well, there's no coverage, right? There's nothing at all. Like
that's right. But they forgot about them because there wasn't an announcement of them coming out or anything. So it kind of just slipped away and people forgot. The second thing that people ask is, how can I help? You're like, you guys are great. Absolutely. How can you help? You can write letters. Just send them something nice, like not gifts. Just send them letters. Put it on a white piece of paper. Hey, we remember you. We love you. We're there for you, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then the third thing that people ask is, what's going on? Why no bail? Because this is
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah.
People
They
who
had so
murder.
they haven't even had their trial yet. They are literally just
Nope.
sitting in limbo right now. No bail, no nothing.
Right. So their trial was supposed to start this week, and it didn't
And
because
just give a brief summary for those who don't know. I'm sure people listening and who will watch know, but they were the ones accused of bringing in that truckload of firearms with the body armor and all that jazz. Is that do
well,
I have
see,
that
that's the
right?
interesting thing. Yeah, so that's the interesting thing. So the first story we all heard was there was a trailer that had weapons in it, and it was
Yeah,
discovered by the participants and reported to the police. That
right.
was the first story that we got out of the Coots. Then it got turned into the police found it. Then it got turned into the police found it at a house.
Hmm.
Then it got turned into the police found it at a house with undercover agents in the house.
Right,
So we now have 4 different versions of
right.
when and how and why and who
And
these
they had
guns were discovered.
diagolon flags on the body armor, like
2
just like
patches on one of
yeah,
them. Yeah,
just
so that was
wild.
Chris L's.
One thing I
Yeah,
know when I saw the first reporting on it, which was or sorry, what I thought was the first reporting, but the first report that I saw was actually that the police had found it.
right.
But one thing I did notice, I'm quite I understand firearms in Canada, so I've been tracking everything since the assault rifle ban, the OIC in May 2020. Is
Wow.
that every single one of those rifles were about to be put on the chopping block. So none of them were actually ARs. They were
Mhm.
all still legal. They were all still unrestricted. But this was propping them into the spotlight, which were subsequently put on that list for Bill C-21. Fascinating. That was the first thing I saw. I was like, ooh, I know all of those, and you can buy all of those right now. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah, did you notice the bird shot as well? So there's a pile of bird shot on the
Hmm.
right-hand side,
Oh yeah,
and
oh
there's
yeah.
there's some survival radios that only get used in emergency. They're not
Yep,
even walkie-talkies. They're
yep,
just you activate them in an emergency. Yeah, these are
yep.
all very scary items. But just like everybody else, with all the stuff going on, mainly in Ottawa, kind of started forgetting about Coots.
Hmm.
Um, and then the POEC is when we started to get a lot more information about Coots. So the mayor of Coots was one of the witnesses. Alberta RCMP testified as well. So we started to get some more of the information, and that's when the story started to change a bit. Now we're at the point where they had, well, this is what the other side's saying. They had undercover agents that were
Hmm.
involved, and they were like basically getting confessed to, is what they were saying. So they were saying they're going to do all this stuff to these agents, and I believe it's 2 younger female agents. So I'm not sure how the press early on said the police found them in a trailer, but now it's a house. And I'm not sure how it went from the police discovered them to the police were there when they showed up,
Hmm.
because they were undercover agents. But in either case, that's basically all we have is information on this entire case in 500 days. Is one fit photo with a police car in the back and a table with more questions and answers on it.
Yep,
And
yep.
that's it. That's all we've got. And the fact that they have no bail, which is very odd for Canada because you have the right to be put out on bail because we have innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
But these
Unless you're
gentlemen,
a flight risk or a risk of right. It's there's like three or
it,
four
it's
different
yeah,
criteria.
it's a little bit further than that because they can take away your passport, and it's actually very difficult to leave your country without
Right.
permission.
Right.
You can
Especially
maybe sneak.
during COVID.
For sure, yeah. So look, they're not a flight risk. They have roots
Yeah.
here. 3 of the gentlemen have never even had an encounter with the police before, and the
Okay.
other one had a minor incident when he was a juvenile, and then a couple speeding tickets. That's the extent of the
Wow.
interactions with a lot of
Wow.
these guys. Yeah, so there's no flight risk because they have roots,
Hmm.
they have family, they have children, and there's also no danger to society. So that's the other big one that they'll keep you in bail for or deny
Hmm.
you bail on, is your danger to society. Your citizens here. And again, what was the harm? All the weapons that they said they had were now in custody of the police. You can put trackers on this guy. And I'm not sure if you recall, but in Winnipeg, there was a gentleman in an SUV who decided to run over
Oh
protesters
yeah.
from
Yeah. Yeah.
convoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Antifa
Well, he
musician hat there.
Right. And he got bail within 1 week.
Yep.
So within 1 week of running over people on video, like there's a lot of evidence that this guy harmed somebody in the community.
Yeah.
He was out on bail, but these gentlemen were not. They were
Right.
denied bail completely.
With a history of
I
insightful music online, like I forget, he had two punk bands, and one of them, the name of the song was like "Kill Harper," like these, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm all for artistic expression. That means nothing to me. But when you actually go and commit violence, and then you see this history, then that would be something that the bail hearing would take into consideration. Unlike people with zero record who have families and roots and all that jazz. It's wild.
Sure, and uttering artistic expression isn't. You need more than that. You need mens rea and actus reus to be a crime, and you also have to have the ability to do it. So
Right.
just declaring, "Hey, I want to send an ICBM to this one country and damage a lot of people," just saying that isn't a threat that is chargeable under the criminal code.
Right.
Acquiring an ICBM and putting fuel into it and saying that, "Yo, okay, we got a different
That's
story
a different
here."
story. Yeah.
Right, because now you have an ability to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But back to these gentlemen,
Yes.
they were not captured with the weapons in arm. They weren't like on a line holding the weapons. They weren't trying to, intimidate anybody. According to the police themselves, it was a cache and a couple bags full of guns. And that's all we have right now. Now, in Canada, we have a right for bail because you're innocent until proven guilty. But these gentlemen are not getting it. They're not getting it. So there's political prisoner is a term that we're using a lot on this one because they were the straw that broke the camel's back, according to the government, as for the justification of the Emergencies Act. During the POEC, they pointed
to prevent terrorism. There, absolutely.
Correct.
Yep.
They said all over the POEC that we could handle everything until the bag of guns showed up. When the bag of guns showed up, that really changed the dynamic.
Yep.
So because of that, they are absolutely very pivotal to the government's narrative that the EA was necessary. And after the POEC itself cleared them and said, yeah, you're absolutely right, it was necessary, it's difficult now to kind of release these guys. That's not going to help. If these guys come out and it turns out they weren't doing anything, well, that's going to be a domino that falls the entire narrative. So this is why we call them political prisoners, because there's something wrong here. They should at least be out until their trial. GPS them. You're not allowed to have guns. We know where you are. We'll check up on you every 24 hours, like whatever. But let them get out and go see their family. And they're not giving them that. The assumption on our side is they're trying to break them and get a deal. Get them to take a deal so that they can say, okay, well, they confessed or we agreed on a deal. These aren't innocent men.
Because you have to plead guilty to accept the plea deal, right?
Correct. And you have to convince the court that you actually believe you're guilty too. That's another step that has to happen. The court can reject a guilty plea if they don't believe you. So yeah, and they're not doing that. They're not taking a deal. They've rejected all deals. They've been receiving multiple offers, 12 years and lower. But no, they're not doing it because they're innocent. They didn't do it. So quite frankly, I believe them. So we've been covering that one all week, and we're going to keep doing it. Tomorrow is Friday, so every Friday we're going to have friends and family of the gentleman come on. So we have a mother coming on tomorrow. We have a wife coming on tomorrow. We have a couple of friends coming on tomorrow, so they can speak to the gentleman and speak to Canada. And let's just keep the conversation going about them, and let's not forget them.
Absolutely.
Let's make sure their spirits stay high, because if we can't get them out, well, let's at least make sure that they know that they're in. That we know that
they exist. Yeah, like you said, it's over 500 days.
501 today.
501 days today.
Yep, today.
That is mind-blowing stuff.
Well, 2 Father's Days. 3 of them have children. There's 7 children involved here. So 2 Father's Day, a Christmas, a whole bunch of birthdays. And they're looking at another Christmas and another Father's Day, because they're looking at May, June 2024 before it starts up again.
Yeah, and look at all the news attention, media attention that the 2 Michaels received, just because it's international. But this is happening right here in our own backyard, which should actually be, in my opinion, much larger attention should be given to this. But it is political, 100%.
100%. Now, I spoke to some of my alt media people, my friends, and I said, hey, I'm covering this. Do you want to help? I always reach out. I like to build teams of people. And all of them said, we can't. I'm like, weird. That's weird. You're alt media. You're not even mainstream media. No.
Did he give you a reason? We
Nope.
can't.
Well, he
Simply
said
we can't.
because we work with this organization, and I don't want to name it because I don't want to out anybody,
Okay.
but they said because we work with this organization, we can't. And the one that made my hair on my arms go up was the one that said, I know one of them personally. They're from my town. I support them completely. I can't help you. It's like, wow. So you actually understand who these people are. You know one of them personally. So you know they're innocent. And you won't, as a reporter, as a journalist, you won't assist. That's weird. There's something very weird about that because this is not mainstream. These are alternate media.
Right.
So that's left with me.
I can only I can only speculate as to which one you're speaking about, but I have seen numerous examples of so-called independent alt media utilizing very suspicious mainstream talking points when it comes to specific agendas. But once again, that's just armchair quarterback stuff. Everybody's the pro on Monday.
I'm not sure what it is because I didn't want to speculate with him. I didn't know if it was whether or not subscribers would support him or
Right.
her. I'm going to say him or her, so
Advertising
we
or
don't tell you.
whatever.
Because they don't have government money, so they actually also are very worried about losing support and other types of income. So, but she said, go for it, do it. You got my support because it needs to be talked about. Nobody's talking about it.
Right.
So well, I haven't received the letter yet.
Outstanding that you're doing that. Friends of ours did run a fundraiser, and my friend Greg Arcade was there playing music for them there. So if you have an interview. Him,
we have an interview with him coming up.
Nice. Okay, amazing. Yeah, Greg's a solid dude.
Let me give you his date just so your viewers know.
Yeah,
coming on Friday. Yeah, so the 14th of July. So he's going to end our activist week. So we have a whole week of activists, and he's the musical activist because his music is activism through music.
Okay.
So we'll be ending that week with him. So the 14th of July, and he's also going to record some, he's going to video some music for us. He's going to do some acapella, and we'll play it.
Awesome.
So yeah, Greg Arcade, Manitoba boy, he's kicking ass. He reached out and he said, "Hey, do you want to use some of my music for your stuff?" And I said, "Your godsend, absolutely." And so he's amazing. It's amazing how this little circle, it does seem to be a bit of a family from coast to coast, and there's a lot of us.
That's the one thing that's missing is this organization, and it doesn't need to be like a formal, but there is a community that just needs a couple flags, a couple speakeasies, to know exist,
or podcasts.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean.
That's what I like, that Canada Relay one. So my Wednesday one is I have the East, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, and then the North. So those are the regions I split Canada up. And in each region, we spend 20 minutes talking to two people who's given us updates about what's going on in their neighborhood and around them. And this gives Canada an unfettered, complete from Canadians to Canadians news. This is a new type of news, I think, because this is how we could learn about. For example, we did an entire week about the fires. So basically, entire Canada was on fire from coast to coast, and we had reports from Nova Scotia all the way to BC about that. So I think that's a good format that lets Canadians get news directly from Canadians without editors and other people between them. And
I love that.
I believe these people.
I love that idea. When you told me that, it's like the true spirit of what the CBC used to be at one point in time. I will
regional correspondence.
Yeah, absolutely. I will try and get on some of those ones that you do, because I'm like, man, this guy's just like too high speed for me, dude. So I'll try and sneak in there like a dirty shirt whenever I can.
I'm horrible that way. Like if I get somebody on the line and they're like, "Hey, yeah, I'm interested in talking to you," I'm like, "Hey, let's do an interview. Hey, come to my Wednesday thing. Hey, I got a candidate thing."
No, that's great.
Like, I'll let them know what's coming up so we can get them there.
Yeah, that's good. I'm the type of person that needs a nudge because I try not to be online as much. I have to consume stuff. I have to stay current. I know all this jazz. You got to do it, for the job, I guess. But I do try to also like stay away and go and spend time outside, and just for my own sanity.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm also double dipping here. So I'm doing all these interviews for two reasons. One, I want to bring these people to Canada. But two, this is how I stay on top of everything. I learned
Right,
so much from the guests. Like they're
right,
telling me
right.
everything.
Yeah,
Maxime
absolutely.
Bernier, I got a crash course in party leadership from him.
Right.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So as a candidate, I want to expand my skill set, being able to talk to anybody, no matter whether they agree with me or not, whether they're leaders or whether they're just community members. I want to be able to talk to everybody. As an
Yeah.
MP, I think you got to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to stay up on everything too. So I pick guests who kind of educate me along the way. We have an entire week of medical information coming up, so vaccine stuff, and that's the one
Amazing.
where we have Peter McCullough ending that week.
Yep.
So that's going to be a good week. If you have anybody that was vaccine injured, might be vaccine injured, or just took the vaccine and there's no injuries, you should be paying attention to this week, because we don't know everything about the effects of this vaccine yet. They're still working and crunching the numbers and looking at the cases. But what we do know is there's some ways to kind of mitigate some of the potential damage. So we call that detoxing. I'm not vaccinated, so I don't have a pony in this, but I love my community enough to know that 80% of them did do it. So
Absolutely.
we want to try and get some help to them.
Yep,
So that entire
100%.
week will be a good one.
Well said. And everybody, and if you don't like, if you didn't take it, you know somebody who did, and you know somebody who has some adverse effects. There's just no doubt about it. I myself know quite a few as well that felt like they had no choice.
Yes. Under duress, that's a legal term. That's where you're
yeah,
forced to do
yeah,
something. That's going to be a problem for the governments later.
big time. Especially the calf there, like that. I'm glad that lawsuit is, or that mass tort rather, is going forward. And it's interesting because the Mefloquine mass tort is also going forward. I just received an update from HSH. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Mefloquine mass tort,
but I'm going to learn from you right now. This is exactly what I do for a living.
I'm a part of that one, and that one I found interesting before COVID, obviously, but even afterwards, it will become case law for this new one that is actually going to be coming up. But essentially, we soldiers were given mefloquine from 1970s up until 2010 or 12,
Wow.
and some troops were forced to take it. If you did not take it, it was a punishable punishable offense. So I myself had to take it, and the company Larium. I've explained this to my audience before, but the company Larium essentially was given immunity. And they themselves said, do not take this for more than 60 days tops. It'll be very toxic. And the symptoms of it are similar to PTSD.
Oh,
and
wow.
so Health Canada was like, no, it's actually good to go. And then they tested it on CAF soldiers. So the master corporal that killed a Somalian kid in Somalia, that started the Somalia inquiry, and hung himself subsequently, but failed and became damaged.
Wow.
He was on mefloquine. All those guys were like the first ones. So the psychiatrist that's part of our lawsuit, his name is Dr. Remington. He was the actual psychiatrist in Somalia administering it, and then saw what was going on, and then turned and is fighting against this now. So in any case, it's a mass tort. There's over 3,000 people that are suing the government individually. Wow. Those who don't know, mass tort is not a class action, so people can see it's you versus the Crown. So it's Alex Cabana versus the Crown. So anyways, that's happening, and it will create some serious case law for this next one, because it's but see, the thing is with this new mass tort is that it's like people that were kicked out for not taking it, not damages from taking it.
Correct.
So this will be interesting to see. So in any case, yeah, that's something that I can talk about when
so what you're saying
on your show.
Yeah, well, I'll drill into that, but this is more of an employment law type of thing and not a health law type of thing. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, but the mefloquine stuff was pretty wild, man. Like you would get like psychotic nightmares and like feelings of like ultra aggression, and they're giving this to guys like in combat. And a lot of the dudes would be like, well, I guess this is just what it's like to be at war, right? And it's like, yeah, don't worry about it. I have nightmares. Well, you just watched your friend get vaporized. Yeah, no shit. But that's not the case, and it stays within your spinal cord forever. So
what was the stated purpose for taking it? Like, why?
It's anti-malarial. And I didn't see any mosquitoes when I was there.
Right. You almost prefer malaria.
Yeah, like I was in the south, close to the Pakistani border, man. Like it's like it looks like the surface of Mars.
Right.
There just barely any mosquitoes. I mean, maybe in the winter season, where it's mostly rain. But anyways, I digress. Yeah, so that's some interesting stuff, man. And I just want to take a look. I saw something here in the chats. I know. So Greg Arcade's coming on your show on the 14th. Chris
Yep.
Deering is watching right now, so shout out to
Chris is on
Chris
too. Yeah.
and V. And I heard that Ellie says hello, which is Chris's daughter. So if she's watching right now, hi Ellie, love you. Hi Lexi, hope you guys are
Hi,
doing
we're
well.
looking forward to seeing your dad. He's
Say hi to
on
say hi to Jason. Jason's going to interview your pops there soon. When's Chris
the
coming on?
it's the 7th of July, and he's coming on with Maggie Hope Braun as well, because
Okay,
we're
cool.
we're mimicking the POEC witness list, and
Okay.
those two were testifying together. So
Okay,
we'll have
so
them
let's
both on the
tell me
7th.
about that. So on the 7th you have Chris and Maggie.
Yes.
Who have you interviewed to date? And I'm gonna get you Danny there. Don't apologies, I haven't
No worries.
replied to you yet, but yeah, Danny, I'm sure would be very happy to come on.
Sure, I can take you through a quick list. Randy Hilliard, so the MPP from Ontario, he became
Nice.
an independent MP after he stood up to his party. That's an amazing episode because he lets you know how the parties work, and
Yeah.
it's not democracy. It's not democracy. It's special interest, according to
Yep.
Randy, all the way. Yep. And we had Jerry McKenzie. So he was an awesome interview. So yeah, 3.5 hours. And Morgan May, his girlfriend, joined us. And we had a
Cool.
little showing from Philip. Philip showed up as well. Just caused a little bit of trouble. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, no, he just stuck his head in there. But yeah, getting Jeremy was tough because Philip is a hard negotiator.
He
He's
is.
difficult.
He's a strict taskmaster.
Yeah, for sure. I also had Corey Morgan on. So he is from the Western Standard. So he's one of the senior reporters from there.
Yeah,
And that was an interesting one. Yeah, it was an interesting one because I like to speak to reporters as well and people because again, this is a large education for me. So I'm trying to interview everybody that can assist me with some skills, and he had a lot of good ones. What I really liked about him is his sovereignty. He's a big proponent of sovereignty. So we had a great discussion about Alberta sovereignty and how that could help Canada. That was an interesting one. I had Donald Best on. So he's an ex-police officer who spent 63 days in solitary confinement because the government, 2 lawyers, 1 judge, and 1 police officer fabricated and created evidence to put him there. It took $250,000, and it took Fantino, Commissioner Fantino, to correct this. So Fantino did an investigation, cleared him. He's out now, but he is now a corruptions investigator, and this is why he's part of our Coots
No
thing.
doubt.
Yeah, when that happened, because he was a corruptions investigator before, and he went after police and busted some, and then they did this to him, and then he had to go through all that, and now he's a very determined corruptions investigator. So I enjoyed that one with him. We had a friend, Tammy Croft, on. So if you're on Twitter, you might see her around. She loves to watch our stuff. I reached out to her because she had a really interesting story. And I lost my sister, had the same name. My sister was young. So there was just this little connection there. And I got to explore it. And she was a lovely lady. Rob Anders. Yeah, Rob Anders was on. So he's a founding member of the CPC, 18 years as a member of parliament in Calgary. He is an amazing human being. He is so smart. He's so willing to give up his time. And oh my, I'm learning a ton from him. And when I finished my interview with him, I said, hey, you got some room under that wing of yours? Because you seem to really know your stuff. And so now he's turned into a bit of a mentor of mine.
Amazing.
I like that guy. Yeah. I had Lee Boston on. She started Students Against Mandates in Manitoba.
Yes.
So
yes.
the universities. Yeah. So she's an amazing young lady. If you ever get the chance, by the way, you should have her on. She's amazing. They stood up against the entire system, and they're still fighting that fight. So that was really cool to have her on.
We had Camille Baciucci on there, the lettuce young lad from Waterloo, University of Waterloo. That was fighting the mandates there. So he got us in touch with Students Against Mandates.
Yeah, they're good people. Stuff. Yeah, they do great. Yeah. They produce more than I do, though. So you think I'm producing? Yeah, they got a lot of stuff.
They got a team, though. You're flying solo, man.
For sure. I had Maxime Bernier on.
Yes.
So he was a fun one. We had him right before the election. He gave us an entire hour, and I had a fun time. His staff gave him the wrong time. So the way we set up that program was I was doing an hour with a panel. We were going to discuss openly and have a debate format of what questions to ask Maxime. And
Okay.
then we had him on to answer those questions. Well, he showed up an hour early. He showed up too early. So bonjour, Maxime, comment ça va? He's like, bonjour, bonjour. You have to leave. You're here an hour early. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. But he was very gracious. And then, yeah, of course, he goes, I got other things I can do. I'll come right back. So
Okay.
that was a lot of fun. Very nice gentleman. I reached out to, by the way, I don't reach out to just PPC. Like people are going to go, you got lots of PPC. Well, they're the ones that respond and say yes. What can I say?
Yeah.
CPC, no, there was nobody that was responding to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had Joe Rampart on. So he's Edmonton commentator. He's lots of Twitter spaces. He does a radio show. He talks about Canada and the history of Canada. So that was fun. I had him on so he can explain to us why he got into Twitter spaces and why he's using his voice as his way to get his message out. So if you're into thinking about getting into podcasts, that would be the episode for you, because we spent a lot of time talking about that. Had Ian Roden, which is a PPC candidate out in Ontario. Mark Friesen, you know him. He's the Grizzly Patriot. Yeah. Hey, Agenda 2030. You want to talk Agenda 2030?
Yeah.
You call Mark up.
Yeah. So he's the subject matter expert on that, is he?
Oh, for sure. And when him and I get together, we're just validating each other's assumptions and research. We're like, oh yeah, you got that one too. Yeah, it's kind of like I said to you when we were talking about trading guests. It was like trading hockey cards. Yeah. Give me a Gretzky for whatever. But with Mark, it's like, yeah, you know about this guy, right? Yeah, he's like, yeah, that guy too. And then this guy's horrible. I'm like, oh wow, you know them all too. But yeah, that was a really interesting conversation. I also had Andrew Lawton on. So Andrew Lawton is a reporter, independent reporter with True North. Yeah. That was an interesting one because we got to learn what malinformation is. This is another type of bad information. So you have disinformation, you have misinformation, and he helped us understand malinformation. And I'll give you an example of what malinformation is. So, for example, during the POEC, Tom Marazzo was on the stand, and Tom Marazzo said, we didn't move the trucks because the barriers were in the way. And CBC would report the headline, we didn't move the trucks, says leader of convoy. They don't add that second part, because the barriers were in the way. So technically speaking, that's a true statement. He did say that. Technically, it's not dis or misinformation, but it's not accurate information. So that's why I was asking Andrew, well, what would we call this kind of information? Because they technically not miss or dis. And he goes, we call that malinformation. So there's a term of malinformation. And that's when you take it completely out of context on purpose, and then you pass it out as something it's not. But you're doing it under the shield of not being mis or disinformation. So that's a different type of information that's just as dangerous. And I think if not even more dangerous, because it's hard to validate. So we spent
falls into the category of faux ignorant propaganda.
Correct. And it's also hard to fact check.
Omitting 50%. Oh, I didn't know.
Right. In fact check true.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's bad. Sense. It's the worst type. And then unfortunately for me, Andrew Lawton doesn't like me anymore because I asked him for some evidence on something he was reporting, and for some reason he decided to demonstrate what malinformation means instead of just telling us. So you can go on my Twitter, it's on there, it's kind of hilarious. It's weird, but it's out there for the public to see. I also had the pleasure of interviewing a man by the name of Rick, but he goes by True North Transparency. So he's the auditor of the police. So he's one of those guys that goes around with the camera and stands in their face and says, what's your badge number? And I'm here to watch you. And it's pretty interesting what the system does against people like that. For example, they try and keep him out of the library because he was there to record just the library. He just wanted to go in there and go to the particular history room and record. But just a simple act of having the camera there creeped them all out and got them banned, and we got to see the video. But it's pretty cool. I like people that can stand up to authorities and kind of keep them in check as well. So that was a really interesting episode about auditing. I had Pastor Adam Grembrandt on. He is, you have to watch this one with a box of tissues. So he's a disabled pastor, no arms, no legs, born that way. He's on his 7th child, so his wife's pregnant with the 7th child. But he took us through the story of his 5th child, which was born during COVID, when they were physically removing him from the hospital for not wearing a mask or vaccinating. They wouldn't let his wife give birth unless she would vaccinate right before birth. And he takes us through that entire story. Fortunately for them, they were able to get it done, but their 6th child was a home birth because they're never going back to the hospitals again. So now he's a proponent of home birth and home church, and this is the new lifestyle in Manitoba, because even a gentleman in his wheelchair was such a high security risk that they had to take him out because he wouldn't wear a mask during the birth of his child. So it's a horrible story. Horrible story. And this happened in
really
Manitoba.
done a good job at getting people to become like medical Luddites, so to speak. Like just like, no, I'm done, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them.
No, and he's part of the vulnerable class. He's a disabled man who needs assistance. He needs his wife. Like, for example, when he went to the hospital to give birth, she, heavily pregnant, has to get him into the chair and all that kind of stuff. Nobody was assisting her. Right. But yeah, because they won't wear masks, so they were outcasted.
Crazy.
Yeah, so that's a horrible story. So for your listeners, go check that one out. You'll understand what the healthcare system was doing to people in the healthcare system.
Yeah.
I had Tim Moen on, so he was the candidate for the Liberal Party, or the Libertarian Party. So he was a leader of the Libertarian Party in 2019. He's an excellent individual. He hates the government. He hates the government. Yeah, he absolutely would like to see anarchy and chaos, I think, but he's got good points, and he makes good points. I think he's looking for a 1776. And I don't know, maybe we're just late on that one.
Well, yeah, I've had that chat with quite a few people, and I mean, we can get into it on July 10th, but Canada's never had a revolution, and I have said many times we are the redcoats that lost and retreated up north, and then here we are, and we finally got our flag, in the late 60s, and we've never had a reason or a moment to punch back and to become something else. It was just like, yeah, okay, cool, you can have your so-called sovereignty now, but that's never really been the case, So no, I find that a fascinating topic.
And with Quebec and Ontario talking about separation for decades now,
that's the only time I've ever seen the culture shift. Where was the referendum in 1996, I believe,
for Quebec? Something like that.
Yeah, because half my family lived in Quebec, so that affected me. I was like, well, do I need a passport to go and visit my aunt and uncle now? That was an interesting time, but yeah, that was close, 51, I believe, to 49%.
It was right on the money there. It was right on the line there for sure.
And then some conspiracy theories there too, as well, about election counting, vote counting.
Really, to keep it together? You think it was supposed to go the other way? Oh, wow. Well, we'll see what happens in the next few years and whether or not it's a good thing. Because I'd like to see Alberta pick up where Quebec left off, take it a couple more steps further, and then settle it for all provinces.
Absolutely.
There should be a new deal for all provinces.
Even if you don't get the referendum separation, look what it brought them. They got the block. They have a federal party, for crying out loud. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just
they have all the concessions that we don't have. They
Right.
can do their own resources.
Just the threat. They can do whatever they want now. So that needs to start. I believe that would be healthy if every province had that power.
Yes. Yeah, and I hope Danielle can stand up for that, but we can get into that one later. I don't know if she is who she said she is. Zach Schmidt, so he's an amazing podcaster out of Saskatchewan. So Schmidt House podcast. He just did a Jeremy McKenzie interview. Cool. You would like him. If you don't know him, you would like him. You guys would be buds if you can connect with him. Yeah, and I can make that happen. Gov Corrupt. So Gov Corrupt on the internet, if you haven't seen him yet on Twitter, you probably have. You just didn't notice. But he goes around and he has such the best cutting responses and stuff like that. And he's dark. Like, he's dark, but he's in Quebec and he's got this great sense of humor. So he came on. And then the last guest that I had was Tom Marazzo. So he was the very first one I had. So I started all my guests with Tom Marazzo.
Okay.
And I do think I'm missing a couple because I wasn't allowed on YouTube for a week. So I had to just jump to Rumble for a week, which, by the way, was a great thing to do. Rumble is a wonderful platform and it's working out just great for me.
Yeah. And
it's growing really fast. I'm just going to go check one more because I'm pretty sure I forgot a couple people for you. Oh, Chris Erickson. So he's a Twitter guy, another big one. He's doing a lot of mental health awareness, and he's created a bunch of Twitter spaces for people to come and to connect in, really with a focus about mental health recovery and to talk about it, because we don't have a mental health system really anymore. We have a system that creates it but not treats it. So he's starting to do that, which is, I think, is a very noble thing. And then the last one that I forgot to mention was Dr. William Mackis. So that one will not be on YouTube. So if you're waiting for that one to be on YouTube, don't. I'm just going to put up a video that tells you to go to Rumble to watch it, because that entire video, I think, would be struck on YouTube, because all it is vaccine truth, which is it does harm you. And this is his opinion, and I want to make sure nobody else gets in trouble with this particular stream. But he has a lot of opinions around that, and it's worth watching. Go check it out on Rumble. I won't be putting that on YouTube.
Yeah.
So those are the ones I did interview already. But then there's a whole whack that are coming up.
Yeah, well, look forward to all the guests that you have coming on, man. So yeah, you've been smashing this. You've been getting after it for how long? How long?
Well, we're a month too.
Okay, I was like the interview stuff, not the POC.
Yeah, the POEC stuff was 8 weeks back in 2022, POEC, and then we came back. POEC, so apologies. Yeah, and then we came back May 15th.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we came back May 15th, and we had our first. We finished our first month with Jeremy McKenzie.
Yeah,
and now we're on our second month, and yeah, it's going great.
It's going very well, man. So you're an independent journalist as well, or at least you claim to be. What is so? Do you have an education in that as well, on top of the 10 other things that you're?
I have an accreditation. Okay. Yeah, I have an accreditation. Andrew Lawton gave me one. So Andrew Lawton's the president of the Independent Press Gallery, and I applied and I became a member of that. So I am an accredited journalist now. Under the Independent Press Gallery. But being an independent journalist just means you're going to do the job honestly, do it to your best of your ability, and get out there and do it. So before I got the accreditation, I was still doing it. For example, I went and covered the wildfire fire in Drayton. So I went to the press conference there and kind of did some of that. But mostly the
Independent Press Gallery, I remember when Kian Bexty got it. That's a provincial body? Or
federal.
Federal. It is federal. Okay.
Yeah, it's across Canada. So it gets me access to the legislator. It gives me the parliament. I can get into the press galleries now.
Okay.
So if I want to go to Edmonton to go see Danielle and be in the gallery, I could do that now. And that's really the only doors it really opens. Everything else I haven't had trouble with.
So so this is the thing I wanted to get into here is so journalism, independent MP, like your resume, CV, we've covered it. You are an outstanding citizen, podcasting pilot, father. You have 2 children. But the big one here that I wanted to ask you was, it says on your Twitter, and I'm paraphrasing here, you are against globalists.
Yeah, firmly against
globalists, vehemently opposed.
Yes.
Tell me what you believe that means. What does that mean? What are globalists in your opinion? How are they affecting us, so-called nationalists? Please elaborate.
Sure. So I believe the globalists have been around since basically the beginning of time, Mesopotamia time, back in when Iraq wasn't Iraq, and we were just kind of grouping up and becoming a society. 13 families got together and decided to run things. That's where that started. And it hasn't stopped. They've done a great job at throughout the years maintaining that group over the generations. Now, I want to kind of be clear. I don't think the globalists are super evil people, like all of them. I don't think they're super evil people. I think there are a lot of brainwashed people that believe they're doing some good, and I believe that they believe in their mission. And I think that their mission from their perspective is a noble one. But unfortunately, their mission requires a lot of pain and suffering from other people. And their willingness to do anything to save the world in their eyes causes them to do things that are not good to other people. And because of that, and I'm a religious person, I go to church, I have my faith. I believe that people deserve to live. I believe that you should be able to have life, liberty, and freedom. And that kind of flies in the face of the goals and the requirements of the globalists. And I believe that what they're trying to do is maintain the world to their satisfaction, but they're going about it in a way that's non-democratic. We have no say in it, and there's absolutely a lot of suffering that's involved in that. So I'm against anything that's trying to take the power from the people, move it up any levels, and have it funnel itself up to a central point. Because I don't believe a centralized government globally has, I won't say our best interest at heart, because who knows? I don't know if they have any interest at heart. But what they wouldn't be able to do is actually fully understand us and take care of us. It would be impossible. So I am for any government. Anytime that the power is moving from the people to the government, I'm against that. Full stop. We need to have it coming back to the people, more of like a republic. And what I've noticed, because they have a book, right? They're not shy. They wrote a book and they told us exactly what they're going to do. And they're being very successful with it. Because they're so open about it, we now know Trudeau, 50% of the cabinet, penetrated 50% of the cabinet. That statement. If you've ever heard it, you know what I'm talking about. He flat out told us that he's been working with Trudeau and they are working on whatever. They're not sharing that information with us. I'm not a conspiracy guy, but I definitely am a research and figure it out type of guy. So I think I first got my bug in that when September 11th happened. Building 7, it's a big question mark. Pentagon attacked so easily. Big hole in the side of the building that a plane can't build or do. Like lots of big questions. That kind of kicked that off for me. But I learned pretty quickly that, Bilderberg Group, you got the Foreign Affairs, the Commission of Foreign Affairs, something like that. There's all these groups that are very, very, very powerful. They have lots of very powerful people in it, and they meet in secret. So with all of that said, WEF came up onto the scene. They're now basically the PR for the globalists. They are out about, they're recruiting, they are enticing, they're bringing in young global leaders. They're very open about it. They're happy to put them on their website. They're happy to invite them to sessions to train them.
They've been around since the 60s, 70s. Videos of Schwab have been popping up of 1971, but nobody knew who these guys were. Like Alex Jones started reporting on Bilderberg Group, in Ottawa, I believe it was 1994 or 1992. That was a big one. And everyone knows Rothschilds and all this other jazz, but
the Rockefellers
and the WEF wasn't really on anyone's radar unless you were deep diving until this COVID thing.
Right. Well, yes, exactly. That's when they came out, because their book came out in March 2020. So I want people to understand it came out in March.
Yeah.
If you've ever written a book, how the heck do you write a book from February or January, when we all supposed to have learned about COVID, to March, and it's published? So, this is a bit of a blueprint. They were planning it. And then, of course, anytime we have a question and it gets shot down quickly, for example, the lab by the meat market. Like I'm trying to be careful because you're on YouTube and I'm on YouTube too. But the lab and the meat market stuff, that was an obvious question mark at the very beginning.
Absolutely.
Like how could you just so quickly dismiss that?
It's because of that, from 1,000 kilometers away. Like, dude, it's right beside the meat market, like right beside.
Yeah. Forget this building that has that title on it, and but things like that. Right away, there was a lot of fear around how sick you were getting. And we bought that. Okay, I bought that in early 2020 as well. We isolated. I was working with the government at the time. I helped them stay online. I got an award for it because I did so much work to continue to get the government to continue even with COVID lockdown. Lots of good stuff. But my first question to my own employer when all of this was happening was, are we going to do antibody testing? Because I believe once you've got infected and you have antibodies, you'll be good. And that's really all we need to know is if you got the antibodies, you should be fine. You can go back to work. This was very early in COVID, and this was our Ontario government. The response I got was, that's not on anybody's radar. They're not doing any antibody testing. They're going to have testing for COVID and stuff like that, but not antibodies. And a huge question mark went up in my head, because why not? If you, it's like chickenpox. Once you got it, you're good. Turns out, no, there's other things going on. There's different variants of it. There's something weird.
They didn't know what it was. Can't test for
Well,
antibodies when they said they knew what it was, but they didn't know clearly because it was mutating at a rate that it was
well,
like
this was at a time where
alphabet
they were
soup.
talking about it, though. There was a
Okay,
lot of talk about antibody testing at that time, and that's why I brought it up to my employer. I said, "Look, because and to me, logically, that would make a lot of sense. If you're going to test
sure,
antibodies, then you got it. You go
absolutely.
to work, no worry."
Yeah,
But no, the response from the health, what is he, the health commander or the health chairman or something like that for Eastern
the health
Ontario?
commandor. I like that.
I don't know. There's a weird name for him, and I'm like, wow, that's very
Yeah,
army like. But
chief
anyways, he
medical
had a name.
officer, I believe, or something like that.
Maybe, but I want to say there was a military, like even a lieutenant might have been in there or something like that. But anyways, when they told me his name, I'm like, oh wow, he sounds important. But he got to make the decision on what the entire protocol was going to be for all of
Mm,
Eastern Ontario,
mm,
and antibodies was not on it.
mhm,
Now, I didn't
mhm.
quit my job or anything like that, but things got really weird after I started asking certain questions. And then I can't actually tell you how I ended up leaving that job, but I am allowed to say we have settled it. Okay, so
Okay,
that I can say,
enough
but
said.
I can't get into more detail. But that was an opportunity now because that I believe was a vaccine related unemployment issue. Because I didn't. It wasn't that we were taking vaccines at that time because they weren't there. It was about antibody testing. Um, anyways, so I learned a lesson there. Don't bring health concerns to work. That may not be a good idea, especially if it contradicts the current narrative. But again, I'm happy to say that issue is settled,
Mm.
and I decided to use that opportunity to go find myself employment out in, of all places, Portland, Oregon. I got offered a job, so we packed
Before
up everything.
before the summer of love, I assume.
Well, this was during. This was just before. Yeah, this would have been 2021. Yeah,
Oh,
2021.
you brave
So
soul, you.
yeah, yeah. And the reason why, like, we packed everything up, I got offered a good job. We sold the property, we got everything done. And then I get we have a requirement phone call. We have a new requirement phone call. You will need to put a hole in your arm in order to work here. I'm like, well, that's interesting because I'm working remote. But
Mm.
go on, tell me the details. And yeah, it became a requirement. And they were heavily for it in Portland. There was like nobody in Portland that was
Oh
against
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah, yeah,
was not going to be a good place for me.
yeah.
So we had everything packed up and sold. And quite literally, we're about to head west to Portland. And we said, well, we got to find another destination now. You don't rebuy in Ontario. You don't rebuy. Once you sold, you got to plan out. You got to go.
Yeah,
You got to
yeah.
go because
You
you're
gotta
just going to spend a lot more to get
you gotta
something
go
else.
cheaper. Yeah, you gotta go somewhere
Yep.
else.
Yeah. So it was Nova Scotia or Alberta based on we wanted land and we only had a little bit of money. We wanted land, and West Alberta was far more attractive than Nova Scotia because I lived in Nova Scotia for a while. I'm a bit of a Canadian mutt. I lived in many parts of this country,
Hmm.
and Nova Scotia is a wonderful place. But I really, really loved growing up on the prairies, and I wanted to give my boys that upbringing that I had. So I'm from Saskatchewan, Manitoba, so I have
Okay,
that as my
okay. My
background.
wife's from Regina.
See
Yeah,
everybody. Yeah, I was in
yeah.
Saskatoon for my younger years, and then my high school years was Winnipeg, early career Winnipeg,
Cool.
and then the GTA after that. So yeah, we found some land, we MLS'd it, we bought it sight unseen, and it has nothing on it. It's completely vacant land because we want to be homesteaders. We want to build everything.
Okay, amazing.
So that's what we did. Yeah, so we did. We rolled out here with an electric car, which pulled a trailer. That's not a lot of fun, but we did it and moved. And when we got out here, the first thing we had to learn how to do was to get water, septic, and electricity
Yeah,
because
awesome.
we need all
Yeah,
those.
yeah, yeah. So have you started construction of any structures, or are you guys like where are you at right now?
We just finished getting the permits all approved, and we finished
Okay,
getting our property. We did a parcel of the property, and we
okay,
just got all that done. We quite literally last week. We've been getting the last piece of papers to come
okay.
together. So now, if we could put down a
Now you
large
can start to
deposit.
do your designs and your diagrams and get it all set up there. Yeah.
No, that part's done too. We got our
Okay.
blueprints and everything.
Okay. Good for you.
We we could put a hole in the ground, but now it's too late in the season. So
Right.
we're gonna have to start again next year. So we'll have to
Okay.
do another winter in the trailers, which worked
Okay.
fine for us, and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
made it
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. That's actually a topic that that is near and dear to my heart, is homesteading and all that jazz. We ourselves, like I told you before we went online, is we moved out here 2 years ago, and last summer, traveling with Canada Marches, didn't really get to do all the projects or start the projects that I wanted to do. But this summer, I'm really gonna do that.
Hmm.
But homesteading, yeah, I think would be one of the side kind of gigs I would like to do, is create like a homesteading podcast, even cover it, because I think it is an art in itself. It's an art. It's a
Yeah.
science. It's engineering. It's molding the land to your will, and being respectful to it. I think that would be really cool to hear. Your thoughts, your struggles, what you've learned, and then, because once again, with your template of across the country, there
Hmm.
are people that do that and face
Yeah.
different temperatures, temperaments, trials and tribulations. I think that's a lot of people are down with this idea if they're not doing it already, and I think that's a rebirth, it's a renaissance, in kind of way, you know.
Absolutely. It's back to your roots, and there's a lot of calm and comfort in being a homesteader because you don't
Hmm.
rely on everybody. So when things were getting weird, like supply issues and stuff like that, we're not really losing sleep over whether or not we can feed ourselves. We got a pond full of fish, we got chickens full of eggs, we're getting some goats, we got a garden going. Yeah, and we're not really too concerned about, if things went really, really bad. We could survive just fine. And
Hmm.
we also homeschool, so the boys are homeschooled as well.
Amazing, amazing. That's yeah, you're hitting a lot of checkpoints, man. That people should, if you're not doing it, you should be taking them into consideration. Like I told you, we're going to start ramping up our maple syrup production, and I
Mhm.
get my meat locally, and we're going to start bartering. So I already spoke with them. They're like, "You got maple syrup, I'll give you beef," and we just start just doing it like that, man. And there's no need for this system that we've been living in. It's we can start to tone that down big time.
And I love the micro community. So my direct neighbors, we've all sat and talked. And if we ever had to just kind of bunker down the 6 or 7 of us, we can. So we got the beef guy, we got the chicken and electricity
Nice,
guy, we got the
nice.
goat guy. Like we're all kind of, if we
Yeah.
had to, we could work with each other on that.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's outstanding, man. I think that is the way, and it also alleviates a lot of fear from people. You're able to disconnect,
Hmm.
and it is good for your mental health. It's good for your PT physically, and then when you do have to go online, you have less of this kind of gross, sloppy anxiety slime. Like you've been
Yeah.
slimed, right? Like you're
Well,
coming in clean.
yeah, the only bills that we have is our mobile phone and our Starlink. Electric, water, septic, we
Nice,
do it all ourselves. And my
nice.
wife doesn't miss those bills. She reminds me all the time, and she loves not having an
Amazing.
electric bill. Yeah.
Yeah, the Starlink is good
Mm.
too. We got ours finally set up there, and it's amazing, absolutely. Because we had shitty internet here for like
Yeah.
ExploreNet, as sure you're
Yes, we had the
familiar with that.
satellite Explorer net. Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
like five megabyte download, like, is impossible. I did most of my podcasts. I think the first like 20 or 17 of them were done tethered to my phone. Like,
oh,
just yeah, yeah.
yeah, you had a bill after that one, I would bet.
Yeah, I get like 50 gigabytes, right, a month, so I would have to like limit my usage and then uploading stuff and editing. So I'm happy to have this now for basically the same
Yeah.
price.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so
And
man, that covers so much. I typically do an hour and a half, so we can wrap this up. But essentially, I'm really looking forward to coming on July 10th. Like
yes.
you yourself, I rarely get interviewed, so I'm willing to take my hat off and actually talk about things that are deep to my soul. And so, any last saved round shout outs, things that you want to plug? And I know I have, so you can check them out on YouTube. Obviously, it's the Yellowhead Yacht Club, and Rumble, and on Twitter, Jason Lavigne MP. Am I missing anything, brother?
No, you got all the big ones, but if you don't mind, I could give everybody a little heads up on who's coming next. We have a few shows that are pretty exciting coming
Please
up.
do.
Yeah, so tonight we have an episode we're calling Forbidden Truth. This is with Morgan May, so Jeremy's girlfriend, and
Nice.
Paul Westhaver, who did a bunch of freedom of information requests out of the Nova Scotia government, got a bunch of truth, vaccines. I better not say anything else there, because
Okay.
it was his conversation that had me taken
Is he
off
involved with the
YouTube.
hospital, the firefighter hospital thing as well? Did he break that?
No, I don't know, but he's got a lot for us tonight. So
Okay.
this will not be on YouTube; it'll be everywhere else because he's going to continue that conversation.
Where can
So if you
people
want to,
find that tonight?
that will be on Rumble, Odyssey, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Getter. So you can find it everywhere except for YouTube.
Just type in Jason Lavigne on any of those and you got it?
Yeah, Jason Lavigne MP. I'm the same handle everywhere. And you can also go to yellowhead.vote and you can find all my links there as well. Plus a little information about my candidacy. So this is going to be a very truth-oriented one. Tomorrow is going to be a sad one. So tomorrow is with Gabrielle Clark. She's a lawyer out of the U.S. She does conversion therapy for young adults and young people who have confusion and they're trying to get back to their birth gender. In Canada, that's illegal. That's called conversion therapy, and that's illegal under Bill C4. I couldn't get a Canadian anybody to talk about this subject, so I had to find somebody from the U.S. to do it. So what we'll be doing is talking about what the U.S. does, because I'm not consulting anybody in Canada on this behavior or this particular topic, because that would be illegal. But what I can talk about is I can interview an American about what they do. So if you're interested in how the U.S. are handling transitioning from wherever you're at back to your birth gender, this will be an episode for you tomorrow. And we're calling that one illegal therapy, because that would be illegal therapy in Canada.
Yeah, man.
You're going to enjoy the next week. It starts off with firearm rights. I have Tracy Wilson from Canadian Coalition of Firearms. So she's going to come and talk to us about the push to fight against C-21 and the handgun bills and this other stuff. Property rights will be a big issue as well, and how the government's overstepping on those. And I'm actually going to be pushing back a little bit on her, because conservatives are not happy that she's doing enough. So I'm going to kind of ask her why they're taking small steps and not the big steps like the Liberals are taking.
Yeah.
Right after that, we have
ask for me, open carry.
Open carry. Well, I say we should be asking for tanks and missiles and then work our way down.
Right.
You don't come in small.
Yeah. Go big or go home.
For
do
sure.
Like the Liberals do, man. Just do it better.
And then Independence Day for the U.S., so July 4th, I have an episode we're calling History Repeats. It's with a gentleman by the name of Daniel. He's from Venezuela. He watched how that government collapsed around him and destroyed his world. He moved to Canada to escape it, and now he's seeing the exact same things happen. So he's going to be able to take us to the "you are here" point in a collapsed democracy and explain to us, look, you guys are doing the exact same thing, and this is what happens.
How old is he? Do you know?
I'm not quite sure. I would put him in his 40s, and Gov Corrupt is going to co-host with me on that one.
Okay, sweet. Because it would be cool. Yeah. I've had some chats with Latin American cats who were a part of La Revolución for Libertad, and then fell into the trap, and we're like, oh damn, this is actually not what we signed up for, and then had to escape. You know, so you fight with blood and then have to escape that prison you built for yourself with your own flesh. It's crazy. So I'm gonna dig that one, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be deep. And I brought Kevin in because Kevin knows the subject, especially the economy parts of it well. Cool. So it'll be two hosts on that one. And then we're going to start our advocacy week. It's really a week and a half. But on Thursday, the 6th of July, I have Bridget Belton. So she's the one that took the video that kicked off the entire convoy. So she's one of the leaders, one of the founders of the convoy. She was stopped at the border, did that video, yada, yada, yada. The Emergency Act was employed. And then everything in between, I think you remember that. So she'll be on Thursday, and she's actually going to be doing it from her truck because she already knows her schedule. So she knows at this particular time she's going to be driving home. Oh, so really? I titled this one Trucker's Life. We'll be talking about her life as a trucker and, you know, some of the troubles that they get into. Well, not get into, but some of the troubles that find them, including the mandate one, which kicked off the whole convoy. And then, of course, we mentioned already on the 7th, we have Chris Deering and Maggie Hope Braun. So that's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a tough one. I have a clip on my channel of from the POEC where Chris was giving his testimony. It still bugs me, especially when he talks about how painful it was. And then we're really kicking off the next week on the 10th with little old you. So I call this one Veteran Advocates because this entire week is about advocates. Okay. So you're a veteran advocate. You advocate for the veterans. You advocate as a veteran. So I titled that Veteran Advocates, and we're going to get into a lot of that work that you're doing. Yeah, sweet. The next one I call Street Advocates, and this is with Chris Dacey. I always get his name wrong. Dacey? Yep. Yeah, Save America or Save Canada. So he'll be a whole episode on him and exactly what he's doing. So he's a street advocate. He's on the street doing his thing. So that's
big time. I met him like day 2 of the convoy, just by a fire. Like I was the first person he videoed. He was like, you know what? I'm going to start videoing. Do you mind? I was like, sure. And he was like, well, and then he just went from there.
Well done. So you're the catalyst. You're the first little,
Yeah, yeah.
the first little pixel on his screen that made it all
Hmm,
happen.
hmm.
And now I also have on the Thursday, the 13th, I call this one Fierce Advocates, because I have Bethan Nodwell and
Yeah,
Stacy
yeah.
Cotter
Nice.
coming.
Right on.
So yeah, they're going to be telling us all about all their work. I had an excellent conversation with them the other day to set
Yeah.
this up. Wow, what impressive women these are,
Oh
and
yeah.
boy, are they kicking some butt.
Yeah. Big time.
So yeah, so that one I'm calling Fierce Advocates because they absolutely are. They're very fierce. And then we end that week up with our musical advocate, which is Greg Arcade.
Which is great. Nice.
Yeah, so he's going to hang
Amazing.
out with us.
That's a
Yeah, so
that's
I
a
think
that's a rock star lineup, dude, man. That's some good content there. Good conversations.
absolutely. And I do have one more week I can tell you about that I haven't told you about yet.
Get after it.
And I'm going to call this one the heavy hitters.
Okay.
So the 17th of July, Theo Fleury.
Nice.
So we're going to be spending 2 hours with him. He's going to tell us everything he thinks. There's going to be no filters. We're going to get cross-checked. We're going to slash. We're going to get hit hard.
Cool.
He's going to let us know what he's doing. And I'm very happy with that one because I got him through Twitter. I kind of hooked him through Twitter.
Yep.
The 18th, this one I can soft announce because we haven't fully firmed it up, but Honorable Brian Beckford.
Cool.
So
Right on.
speaking to Beckford.
Yep.
I can't get into too much about that one because I don't know what we can talk about. He's still got some ongoing legal stuff that he's working on. I really want to get some updates around that. So that should be awesome. On Thursday, the 20th, I have David Whitehead, known as Truth Warrior, on Twitter. Yeah, so David is going to be joining us on the 20th. And then on the 21st, we have Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson. So we'll be spending an entire 2 hours with her as well.
Cool.
So if you don't know who she is, she's a media personality that does a lot of work with the PPC. She's out there and she's a very good voice. She is definitely the type of people we want out there. And those are the ones I can announce now. There's a couple more that are too soft, but yeah, I think we'll be busy for a while.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You like I said, you're hustling, and hats off to you for doing it. And what a great. So clearly, you have a design to your madness, which so I like it, and you're really good at breaking stuff down, like your Twitter faces and the coast to coast and the morning show and all this jazz. Very creative and very well done, sir. Hats off to you. So anybody who hasn't checked out Jason, please do. I will be. I subscribed to you as soon as I saw you brought Jeremy on, and then I saw all the guests and all the work that you had done, which is the way, man. With this type of content. Clearly, there's a desire for it. People like it, and like you said, or paraphrasing, but if 5 people dig it, if I change one person with one guest and one mindset at a time, I'm like, dude, that's all I need.
Absolutely. And what makes me really proud is I'm trying to create additional podcasters. I want more people talking. I want a lot of us out there. So Rob Anders, I'm happy to announce, is going to be making a show.
Amazing.
And Gov Corrupt will be making a show. So I'm helping some people also do some shows as well.
Yeah, it's one thing to, put out saucy tweets and good stuff that gets a lot of traction and people dig it, but it's like the face-to-face, the conversations, and then what, like you said at the beginning, learning from one another. We have such a massive country that it's you obviously know your neighbors, build your community, get after it. But we have such a massive country. It's an honor to speak to people all across North America. It's good stuff, man.
Yeah. Well, with Peter McCullough and then Gabriel Clark from the U.S. And sometimes you have to bring people from the States because some conversations we can't have in Canada.
100%, and to have that outside view, is always good. I deployed, and we'll get to this on July 10th, but like I deployed with an American unit. So all my American buddies are like, the heck, what's going on up there, dude? Like, it's wild.
It's crazy.
And I was like, well, wait, man, like Biden's just getting started. And of course they're like, damn.
I hope they don't get as bad as us, because it is pretty bad. Like with
it's bad,
and stuff up here. Yeah, we got some pretty harsh things.
Yeah, we used to be called, America's hat, and now we're called America's parasitic mind. It's just
we're the tinfoil hat now, right? We're the crazies,
right? Absolutely. Okay, so brother, I want to thank you for coming on, man. Any final save rounds? Floor is yours.
Well, I would just like to thank you, actually. You're also doing the same type of mission that I'm doing, which is to get out and get into minds, go through the ears, get into the minds, and spread some good messages. It doesn't always come out great because some tough love has to happen and we have to tell the truth. Yeah,
Mhm.
we're in some tough times and we're going to have to roll up the sleeves and work hard. But I do believe in Canada. I always believed in Canada. I want the Canada I remember, which is the one I loved no matter what. And I think we will get there. I have a lot of optimism that good things are going to come. So I haven't given up. I'm not throwing in my towel. And I really, really want to thank Canada. You guys have been amazing, saying yes to me so many times. These are all Canadians that said yes. And I love you all very much. And I want to remind you all to God bless as well.
Amazing. Yes, God bless. And we couldn't do this without our families. I couldn't do this without my family, without Patriot Propaganda, and of course everybody who does support us. We love you all. So thanks a lot, brother man. Stick around. I'll have just a quick chat with you, and I'll
Sure.
just close out right now. Cheers.
And
Oh, I clicked too soon. Sorry, Jason. Anyways, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank Jason, amazing guy who's getting after it. It's really cool to see people doing this. I've made some videos before about creating a circuit and getting more people talking, so that we can actually get more voices and combat all of this globalist nonsense that's going on. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next show. We'll see who we got. I love you all. Peace.